Watch.
This is the Personnel Committee for the City of Green Bay on July 25th at 6:20. Present is Alder Hutchinson, Alder Johnson, and Alder Burnett. I don't know if we have anyone else in Zoom. No? All right, we've done the roll call. I'll entertain a motion on the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That passes unanimously.
Real quick, can you guys get in the meeting? We're supposed to log in?
I went out and I went back in. Gotta leave the first one. It was
Two.
I just did that.
I'll entertain a motion on the minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Regular business, item 1, for consideration with possible action on a request to approve the City of Green Bay Civil Rights Compliance Plan for the Wisconsin Community Safety Fund Grant. Does anyone have any questions for staff?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And that passes unanimously. On item 2, for consideration with possible action on a request to fill the following replacement positions and all subsequent vacancies resulting from internal transfers. If we have no questions for staff, do you want to take them all as one, or do you
Yeah, I would
want
make a motion to suspend the rules, take up items 2A through 2L with one roll call vote, or one vote.
do I have a second?
I'll second that, but I have a question.
And I have a question as well.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Alder Burnett?
Director Grenier, notice Assistant City Engineer, I know you've lost quite a bit of talent in your department. Is this, do you feel a good pay grade for the position? Or do you have any issues with the recruitment of these particular positions?
Well, I think we're just starting the recruitment. This was the result of one of the assistant city engineers taking appointment as assistant director of public works for the village of Louisville. So it was definitely a promotion opportunity.
Oh, okay.
And Alder Johnson?
Yeah, two questions. One, did we lose Slatke again?
Yes. He's taking on a new role in WTC.
Okay. That was quick. So, what do
What do you say?
you say, right? The other one is obviously Development Director. It's a high-profile position. I love the standard forms, right? What would you do without this position? But Chief Falls, you and I had a brief email exchange about that. You know, before. I guess how are we posting? How are we seeking this role? What are we doing?
So I think at this point, I know the previous director, I think his last name was July. I think Mayor and I are still going to finalize exactly how we're going to do that. And I think we're going to talk it through what direction he wants to go. And I think the mayor said, we can sit down and talk that through with you as well if you're interested. So that's where we're at. I guess there's no decision at this point.
Well, in you know, something I think that, and maybe I should have pulled this one out, not that it may not require different action, but, you know, I've had conversations on and off over the years about whether or not this department should be split. You know, I get varying opinions. Just curious if you guys have had those conversations at the staff level.
We have. I don't know how in-depth we've had those conversations, and I think since I've been in this role, I think we've reorganized the department about 3 or 4 times. So, I mean, there's a lot of shuffling going on with that department, and it has come up with what you're talking about. So I guess what would you split it? Are you talking about economic development and then everything else?
Yeah, I mean, development versus inspections. You know, as I talked to Director Sexualty before he left, you know, he had a different thought, which was more of like a division leader concept. You know, but I think my bigger concern, maybe more on the development side, is, you know, I oftentimes go back to the hunter and the farmer analogy, and someone who's out actively seeking development, you know, versus someone who reacts to what comes to you. Two very different things, two different skill sets. I don't know who in that department, and it's an honest question, who in that department is the hunter? Who's out, you know, trying to secure development in the city of Green Bay? So I guess that's, so if we approve this today, it would be to replace the role as it's proposed. But if you guys sit down and say, you know what, we want a different path, is that something that you would bring back to council?
Yes, it would be.
Yeah, and are you actively thinking about all the alternatives?
I think so, yeah, at this point. Like I said, with the director leaving, a few weeks ago, it's going to be approved, by council next week. I think a decision will be made next couple of weeks on what direction we're going to go. And if we are going to make any changes, potentially, I mean, it could be, I don't know if we'd be ready for next Tuesday, but that decision will be made pretty quickly.
Yeah, do you have like a search and screen committee, stakeholder group formed around this at all to get some additional perspectives in the room?
Not at this point. I think it's either, I think we would like have a national search, and then I think we'd probably have that committee formed after that, is my thought. Like that'd be one option, or I guess, are you suggesting?
Yeah, I would highly advise of that. I mean, you see that a lot of times in government institutions, especially UW system, right, where you have these high-profile positions, or maybe you get a couple of stakeholders in the room. I don't think we need to be involved in that meeting, like I think the mayor can appoint who that is, but you get, a developer, people who were impacted by inspections, obviously the mayor, but I mean, some different folks that maybe have expertise in those various areas to make sure that we're getting a good candidate. And I personally, I think you ought to do this with every director role, honestly. I think these positions are too important to the city, to not be thorough, so. Okay.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that is item 2, sub A through L has been passed and approved. Number 3, consideration with possible action to add the position of the deputy treasurer to the administrative services department staff.
So we do have, you have a memo in here, and then the cost of fiscal impact. We do have Director Allenbecker here, if you would have any questions, I think she could answer them.
Alder Burnett?
Thank you, Chief Falls. This is an addition, right? This is a new creation. I did study or look at some of the other municipalities, and I know we had in the agenda talked about, you had spoken about some of the HR analysis that other municipalities, how they staff their finance department. Little caution, and this is not in the document itself, but each municipality is a little different. For example, some of our departments have financial specialists within their department, like the Parks Department, for example. So some of the numbers for other municipalities have those positions in their finance department. So it's not that the data is skewed, it just needs to be looked at from that perspective. So the question is, in some of our city departments, we perhaps have more staff than other municipalities. So the justification to use that same, well, should we reduce some staff? Like, it's hard to compare apples to apples when it isn't apples to apples. Every municipality is different. Racine, I think, has a library system. Appleton has a health department. So there's just differences. When it comes to the actual position, I'm not disputing that it's not needed. It seems like the justification is there. One thing that I get frustrated about, this has come up a couple of times, is that we adopted the budget. And it's like a broken record, but we passed the budget with pretty hefty expectations of increased revenue. And it's already like nearly August, and I'm not quite sure if we're going to meet all those revenue. Now, we might be meeting the expense side because a lot of positions haven't been filled quickly, given the market and the demands of the HR department. So if we go ahead and approve this and it's beyond the budget process, the argument I'd make is, why don't we just wait until the next budget process? We did this with the law department where we expedited some of the increase FTEs. We did that early because of the open records. We allocated more money from the contingency to provide the wage analysis. So I know that things come up mid-year, and I don't want to be extremely rigid, but this has been happening more and more, and I that's a preface thing that Director Allenbecker, just so you know where I stand at it. I'm not saying that it's wrong to ask this if you feel the workload is justified, I just don't know why we don't wait till the next budget year. So anyways, I'll let you respond to that.
That one in particular, the reason why I did ask specifically to talk to HR whether or not we could get this in this fall, it would only be about 3 months early by the time you really recruit and would get it in. You know, this will be I think the 4th year that we've taken on tax collection in the city of Green Bay. And that position, and right now is our assistant finance director treasurer that really has taken on the whole role. It takes up anywhere about 12 to 13 weeks of their time to do a tax collection. The majority of their time is overseeing tax collection. And so that is just something that we didn't have in our department a couple of years ago. We've limped along, we're not even done with budget, we're into tax collection. Not only does this person oversee the temporary staff and all the collection, then we also have receiving, we have our financial analysts that have taken on additional responsibilities. So this is going to be the 4th year, and you're gonna say, why didn't we do it sooner? It just, we keep just trying to plug through it, and it just, every year, it gets, we're so far behind, we can't even get ready for an audit every year end, because we've now been from about the middle of November recruiting, get our temp staff, getting everything ready, and then we received tax bills till right about February 7th, second week of February. In the meanwhile, we should be doing your year-end transactions. So we really, this has put, for 3 years in a row, it has put us behind at year-end. And so that's just one of the bigger tasks, but that with this person being a deputy treasurer, they would really oversee the tax collection, and that's why I asked if we were going to get this position, instead of waiting till, let's say, January to recruit, because right after my busy time, one of my busy times, I'd asked for 3 months, could we potentially get this moved up ahead? You're right, that absolutely, then assumption is that it'll be in the 2024 budget, right? And I understand that. Again, whether it's a fair analogy or assumption or justification is this year, as we did budget interest for 2023 budget, the expectation is that we knew it was going to go up. We jumped up the revenue portion quite a bit. We are at over 300% of what we budgeted for 2023 for interest so far. We are only 6 months through the year. So that line in the revenue line has been well exceeded for this year. We're well over $1 million more already than what we had in the budget. And part of a small portion of that is doing the allocation of where do we invest the dollars to get a better return back. So that is either what the treasurers are doing or the deputy treasurer is going to also help manage that money. So again, more dollars, higher rates, the better we can invest, the more return we can get. It's really more revenue overall for the city.
So the priority-based budgets, I know that was a justification of staff time this year has been devoted to that. With priority-based budget, do you anticipate more staff time needed to operate that system and to analyze it? Because that was kind of my assumption that ongoing we would need less staff because we have priority.
Well, I
Or
would
that
tell
we
you,
would need more, in other words.
I can start and then Joe can jump in. So the startup, getting some of the information into the system, getting the programs in was really a lot of the departments put a lot of that time in. But last year when we tried to use the priority-based budgeting for budget, it ended up slowing us down 3 to 4 weeks because we asked the departments to put the information in the budget program, and then it was supposed to come into Tyler Munis and combine our two program budgeting system. So it created a lot of extra work last year for the finance department to try to get the two budgets to merge. This year we're going to simplify. We're actually going to use a little less priority budget-based budgeting, put more into Tyler Munis, but then after the budget is complete, then in this case we're going to ask right now, probably the assistant finance director to help get the budget out of here, get it now put back into priority-based budgeting, and then try to get reports out of it. So it's just one more additional tool that we did not have probably 2 years ago. And I think the priority-based budgeting is very interesting to see it by program, and we could get some good information out of it. It just has been an additional layer of budgeting during the budget time period to try to also, use this other system and have them work together. So again, last year we tried using it, didn't work great. They didn't find a better solution necessarily for us to do our budget, so we're going to know after the fact. As soon as the budget is done, we're going to try to then get it into priority-based budgeting. So another task that either a treasurer could do or assistant finance or treasurer could help get that into this tool. again, one more program that we didn't
Yeah.
have 2 years ago.
So two other questions before Joe responds to that. One, did you consider the assistant treasurer position in the budget this year? Was that discussed with the mayor and his staff? And was that just something that wasn't included for consideration?
It wasn't necessarily, it wasn't, I did not bring it through at this point. I mean, we continue to limp along. Your finance, we're the most frugal, thank you. Yeah, I think it's the word, frugal department. Well, Steve is pretty dang close. So I did not
Yeah.
bring it through. We
That's
just keep
fine.
trying to limp along.
How about this, final question, because by the way, I'm glad you're bringing it to us. That's what department heads should do. This is, you're seeing a need, you're bringing it to the council who kind of decides these things. But the question I have now, assistant treasurer, it's a highly paid position. You may imagine it's a position that a person would stay in, at least that's the hope, for a long time, which means that it could technically be a budget item well into the future.
Yes.
Whereas something lower grade on the pay scale, like a clerk, a finance a specialist or something, could do a lot of that administrative stuff that doesn't necessarily have supervision duties. We might be able to pay them a little lower, still get a lot of that work done. And then if there's a vacancy, then it might be, if you have like 2 or 3 of those sorts of positions in your department, it might be easier to fill than maybe, anyways, any consideration to a lower grade position?
And I think, well, I'll be honest, I think I was looking at the other way, and that was the discussion actually I had with the Chief Falls and with the mayor, is that succession planning for really my position is, Linda being our assistant finance director, trying to give her the time, because there's enough things that I don't know how to do, that I don't have time to train her, I don't have time for succession planning, that we have a higher level position, that person can start learning some of the roles that maybe then they can move into the treasurer role, and then, if everything works well, then the assistant finance director can move into the finance director's role. So yes, definitely succession planning, but I was gonna start them a little higher to try to maybe, kind of fill in the, the higher level position.
Where are you going?
Someone was
not
I have a
answering.
birthday
She's-
this fall, you never know.
Someone with sand, right?
Not answering. All right, no other questions.
I do. Well, go ahead. Alder
Okay,
Hutchinson.
real quickly, the budget work you were talking about, is that the last quarter of this year, that's when that would occur?
Right, but really, by the time we would get approval for this, really, it would be beginning of August. If we were to start recruiting, start doing interviewing, I can't even imagine you would have somebody until September, October.
Right.
What I'm saying is, yes, I would be asking really for a quarter's worth of unbudgeted dollars to cover this position.
Right, and the work associated with the budget, when you're trying to combine different programs, when does that work occur? Like, when would you need help for that?
Well, like I said, tax collection truly starts, we typically, I don't know, about 6 or 8 people, we hire temporary staff for
For the
tax collection.
taxes?
Correct, and tax collection usually starts first week and a half in December. So we interview, we work with HR, and we interview the temporary staff. So that usually starts about October, November, we start recruiting, and then we interview in middle of November. There's cash drawers, there's documents, there's many things to get ready
Okay.
for the tax collection that starts. We
So-
have brochures, there's just a lot of things. So having this person in by really the early November, end of October would be practical.
Practical for
And that's just for them to
taxes.
learning and just taking over tax collections. And then, of course, there's many more things on the job description that I'd like them to learn. So if they were in a few weeks earlier, they could just even understand. If it's not internal transfer, then at least it would be, they would maybe learn a little more about the city before they jump right into tax collection.
Okay, thank you.
On job duties, down near the bottom, fourth from the bottom, serves as the water utility in Green Bay Metropolitan Sewage District treasurer. If I understand correctly, the water utility has its own budget.
Yes,
Are we being reimbursed for this person's time handling their finances?
let me stop right there. Originally, we had potentially looked at 2 assistant finance directors, and I was going to ask for a second assistant finance director, and that's when I moved that label under that. I now decided to do a deputy and have it fall under the treasurer. That position will now actually go back probably to the treasurer. Second, we do bill back water utility. I'm not 100% sure if we bill back water, I can't quite remember. But because they are both under the city of Green Bay, we have to have, the city of Green Bay actually has to, by state statute, has to be the treasurer of the water utility. So we have to basically sign off on their monthly financials. So we have to review their bank statement and oversee their statements for CGB and MSD. That one I know we bill. Water, I can't quite remember, but we also have to review their monthly bank statements. But, so, I'm sorry, long conversation, but between, under Linda's role as a treasurer, she would be, have that responsibility. Now, she could designate the review of the documents.
She still signs off.
The treasurer would actually sign off on it.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Alder Burnett?
I gotta be consistent, like around budget time, I had made a lot of motions for a lot of departments to, I made a lot of motions for a lot of departments to withhold hiring positions halfway through the year or delay hiring 3 months, and like, I've done that, and I probably frustrated a lot of department heads, and I do that because there's also the other end of the spectrum, and that's the taxpayer. And budgets that are stretched, personally, businesses are stretched, city, I understand that, we're stretched. Director Ellen Becker's trying to improve the efficiency of her department, which will improve the city, I get that. But I need to be consistent on this. So I'll vote against this, not because I won't consider it for the next budget year. And I'm not quite sure I want to make a budget to delay this until consideration of the next budget year, because I don't think it will get a second, or don't know if it will get a second. But I can't support filling this. I'd be in favor of thinking or considering it for the next budget year.
If I can just jump into, I think Director Ellenbecker and myself, we don't like bringing positions before, like outside the budget process, as we always try and do. I think just the pressing matter is we would support this position for 2024, and this is a tax collection that's going to occur in December and January. So it's like, if we're gonna support it for 2024, we might as well try and get 2 to 3 months, because there's a big pressing project that the person can help out with. That's kind of the underlying message that we're trying to convey.
Go ahead, Alder Johnson.
Yeah, I appreciate, the point that Alder Burnett's making, certainly do. In fact, I've kind of raised those same points in the past as well. And, and I think that, I just want to make sure, though, that as a body, we never get, to use Alder Burnett's word, rigid, right? That we're unwilling to consider emerging needs that happen throughout the year that you just simply couldn't predict. And the reality is, with $116-ish million budget, you're going to have that. I'm actually, quite frankly, I run a small nonprofit, and we have a full-time person that handles finances. The fact that the city of Green Bay has only 6 is a little mind-blowing to me. I guess I've never really contemplated it until it's kind of before us to talk about. I do agree as well, though, I think there's a danger in comparing us to other municipalities, because my gut reaction was, okay, if we're understaffed here, where are we overstaffed? I had the same thought. It doesn't mean we are, but it's just kind of the way that, your mind wanders on something like that. So if we're willing to support this, I think for next year, that to me, there's always that hitting cost, that opportunity cost. And that opportunity cost of, quite frankly, the well-being of our staff. I don't want any of our staff to not feel like they can ever come to us and say, I'm drowning, I need help. And I think that's what's happening here. I kind of heard a little crackle in your voice before, Director Ellenbecker, but it was, to me, that's the message that I'm kind of hearing, is like, hey, we need some depth here, we need some assistance here. We did add some services, we didn't request for additional support, and then that's what we're doing now. And the fact that we do have a revenue source, an unbudgeted revenue source, or exceeding a budgeted revenue source that can fund it for 3 months, and I think really bring that person through a really critical time, right? That the budgeting process and the tax collection process, that to me is a prime training opportunity. No different than when police or fire or others have come to us and said, hey, can I do an overhire to train someone? And we've always been willing to do that, and I think we ought to be willing to extend that same courtesy to other departments that really need that lifeline.
Go ahead, Alderman.
Yeah, what I'll just say is, again, be mindful that there are a lot of other departments that probably could use additional staff, that maybe are not coming to us with that need. One, it could open up the floodgates to that, and I'm not saying it will, but also, it's like, man, Public Works could use some extra drivers or laborers. Parks Department could use additional staff, a new police officer, firefighter. You know, these are all things that really should be discussed at budget time when we set the park. Again, not to be rigid, I get it. I don't want to be those things. I just need to say that for me, I need to be consistent. We've really got to get back to that budget process when we determine these things. So it seems like we're moving in the right direction. I think we're communicating better as a entire city government. So I'm not like, no, this can't happen. I'm willing to consider it. I just want to prolong it until the budget year. So.
My opinion on this, and granted, I've never really worked for the private sector much of my life, other than high school and college jobs. My entire career was spent working for the taxpayers. But I saw for years at the police department where I'd sit at a staff meeting and, well, the mayor said this is how much we get and we don't have enough, so we're not going to hire guys. And I saw how that affected us and our ability to do the job we need to do. You could drive around the city and it's not hard to see where we're short-staffed. And, you know, I understand the taxpayer because I'm a taxpayer. I understand that. But I understand that I'm willing to spend the money. And this is our city, and we need to take care of it. And when I have to walk in someone's front yard because I put in a request to have the trees trimmed, covering the sidewalk, and you literally have to be 5 feet tall not to run into the branches of this tree, and they tell me it will be months till we can get to it because we don't have the staff. And you see the sucklings growing up, which block your ability to see around a corner at a stop sign to safely get onto a street because we don't have the staff to pick it up. And we asked to have our bathrooms open in our public parks so our citizens who paid for those bathrooms can use them, but they can't use them because we don't have the money for the staff. And I also looked at the amount of employee positions that we had to fill, and I'm thinking in my head, how much money is sitting in the bank because these people left their position and we didn't have to pay them? And what's happening to that money? Is that something that, you know, is being used up because now we're paying overtime? So, you know, there's a balance there. And I look at when we said we're not going to have those legal aids in the law department, and we got so far behind, were we doing the taxpayers harm by not answering their open records requests in a timely fashion? Where we were over 100 in arrears at one point until we added 2 more staff. So I understand we want to try and do something good for the taxpayers, but at the same time, we can't do good for the taxpayers if we're hurting our city by not having the staff that it needs. And I understand what Alder Johnson was saying, that, you know, I wonder, maybe there's some positions that we don't need. And that's certainly something we should be conscious of all the time. You know, can we do it better? Can we do it more efficiently? The license plate reader sounds like it's going to allow us to do a lot more work, a lot more efficiently without having to hire more staff. So I really cringe when we start talking about not filling positions. And I understand you want to save money. I get that. But I also get that you got to strike at the right time. And this seems like the right time to get this position filled. It will benefit whoever comes in 100-fold to be in there now than after the budget time. And this is a new thing we're dealing with, having to collect taxes again. It's been a hell of a long time since we had to do it. So anyway.
Well, what I'll just say, and not getting into a huge dispute with
Right.
you, but I get what you're saying. This is not a filled position, this is an added position.
Right.
And I agree completely. Emerald Ash Borer, my district, not being able to pick up yard waste quicker than we normally would. These are all demands of our city government. And if we say yes to this position, are we fairly judging that based on other positions, given the fact we had to meet levy limits? So when you say that there are constituent services that you see we need additional resources, why fill this added position when we could judge that on another needed added position, like forestry,
Absolutely.
public works, or.
Absolutely. I mean, the whole Uncle Fester thing. 2 CPs are assigned to that entire area. They're chasing their tails. They're not doing the job they're supposed to be doing because we don't have enough CPs. Absolutely. I think there's a lot more we could be doing. There's a lot of stuff, if you look at and you talk to the old people around here, that the city used to do that they don't do anymore, that they've quit doing. We put it on the shelf, and we're not doing it anymore. And these are services that you see other communities are doing. And how are they doing it? That we can't do it. Sometimes I think we have to be really conscious of, cutting off our nose to spite our face because we think we're doing something good for the taxpayers. And I get a lot of calls from people, not as much. I get more calls from people saying I'm willing to pay for these services than I get from people saying you need to cut services to save tax money. And and again, you're right. Do we need this more than that? And I guess I would ask Joe, this program we looked at in finance, the first one, is this program capable of telling us this position is necessary and it's necessary now, as opposed to, the impact there would be impact, but not that great of impact, or it's something that could wait till later on. Is that possible to start doing with some of these positions that we're looking at?
So I think what the program does is looks at programs, to use the word. So what we do is we create all the programs that our departments work on.
Right.
And then it breaks out by personnel, non-personnel costs. And then we had some other scoring in there, like is the population using this, is it increasing the need for it? Is it decreasing? Is it mandated? Stuff like that. So it sets up a kind of a score where you can kind of look at, all right, this is a mandated program that we need, and maybe we're not spending as much money as we should, and then we have a program that's not mandated and we're spending more money. So that's kind of what you have to look at a program level. So it would be a little bit more difficult to kind of drill down per position what's needed, but what you need to do is look at a program like tax collection, see where that's scored in our system, and see how it's kind of compared to other programs and say, okay, could we use an additional body for tax collection and all the other duties outlined? Because those programs would then be more funded as compared to other programs, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
it does, and I don't want to go off tangent here too much, but once this thing is up and running, I think it would be very beneficial for the alders if we're willing to come in and sit down with you and learn how to read this data so it can help us at budget time when we're saying, let's get rid of something to save money. Well, where are we going to get the biggest bang for our buck with the least amount of harm? So, I mean, yeah,
I hear it always goes well when you cut roads.
No, I'm getting a shit ton done tonight, so I'm gonna throw a cylinder on too much. But anyway, yeah, I'll get off my soapbox now.
And maybe I could just add one thing, is in the sense of, this is a position that we felt like we would support at budget time. And that's obviously up to the common council if they want to approve it or not. So that's why it's coming here right now.
Sure.
And that's really what it is. So there might be other positions that we didn't bring forward because we knew this position is going to be brought at budget.
So in your opinion, this is why it's in.
That's why it's here right now.
Director Ellenbecker's, and the mayor obviously gives his blessing on these things too.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
The fire chief, the police chief, they might say, yeah, we see it's important, but we think, okay, all right. All right, so did we have a motion? No?
I would move to approve.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Wait,
Whoa.
real quickly, I don't know if, does it need to be clarified? I would move to approve for, I guess, the immediate posting of the position funded through surplus interest earned income.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to be clear that the
Yes.
motion is to do it now.
And that's your seconding of that, Alder Hutchinson?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay, so we have 3
You're not
ayes
opposed?
and 1 no.
I'm voting no, reluctantly. Trust me, it's reluctant.
On to the next item. For consideration with possible action on the request from Alder Chris Weary that additional revenue from increased short-term rental revenue be used partially or fully fund an inspector for these properties that deal with the unique issues they present. Focus should be on evening and weekends with parking violations, property and lawn upkeep, in addition to administrative duties to relieve planning staff and freed them up for their main job functions. Staff.
So I don't believe community economic development staff member could attend tonight, but I think the thought was Alder Weary also put it in a request for that budget request system that was put together. So I think the thought would be to refer to staff to bring this along in the 2024 budget as a position.
Is he looking for all these rental properties, Airbnbs, short-term? I mean, I've got a house in my place, it's a rooming house, which really blew a bunch of the neighbors out of the water, because it falls under different rules than Airbnbs.
So I'm not sure exactly what he's looking for, and maybe I should clarify what I think staff would recommend is, staff would recommend this be referred to staff to answer those questions and what would be the
Okay.
best roles and job responsibilities for this position to address the needs he's coming up with.
All right, Alder Burnett?
Yeah, so I didn't talk to Alder Weary, but having represented that district, now this is a decade ago before all the Airbnb stuff happened, but there's also the transient rental, we call them the Packer party houses. So that particular area near the stadium gets a lot of people in and out that don't have any long-term ties to the community. And as a city government, we're always talking, not everyone, but we're talking about things like equity and what it means. Well, here's a neighborhood that is more specifically impacted by a larger concentration of such homes, and they're dealing with the negative fallout of those sorts of housing arrangements, that funds generated from those licensing or regulation fees should go to offset or inspect some of the quality of life issues that that neighborhood is facing. Because there are a lot of homes there that are single occupied homes, owner occupied homes, and that they are suffering the ill consequences of an influx of people that have no ties to the community other than perhaps being tourists or having a short-term stay there. So I think a refer to staff would be appropriate, because, you know, we gotta be careful, because we can make this, as you said, these distinctions in other parts of the city, like, oh, we're paying a lot of taxes, so, you know, we gotta be careful, but that's an area where this priority-based budget could plug in and figure out a fair solution, so. That makes sense.
Yeah, totally support what Alder Weary's trying to achieve here. I think a referral makes sense. I think there's a little bit more that's got to be vetted out here. Because I too have had a number of calls, you know, around this area and this concern. I mean, to me, at first blush, I'm looking at this thinking, gosh, this could be a second shift worker, you know, but the other maybe reservation I would have is dedicating funding from that exclusively for this purpose, because then you're like, okay, this position, all you're doing is short-term rental compliance, and that could be, we don't know how many hours a week that's going to take, right? So I'd rather say, hey, department head, you need to achieve this. You need to enforce this. You need to be over there during second shift hours. You need, whatever it is, X, Y, Z. You figure out how to allocate the resources you have to achieve that goal, and if you need more resources, i.e. another position, come back to us and tell us what that looks like.
You see what Ed Schwabenham's going through. I mean, they've literally got neighborhoods that nobody lives in anymore because they're short-term rentals, and trying to buy property, according to people I know, who are trying to buy a house, the cost has gone through the roof. And it's affecting their schools and everything else. So it's an interesting problem. I'm sure they never foresaw coming down the road at them. So I think the sooner we get in on this and we get something figured out where we want to go with this, the better off we're going to be. Alder Hutchinson?
No, I got an itchy head.
Oh, okay.
But I think to Alder Burnett's point too, I mean, there's a high concentration, you know,
Yes.
of these over there, but I think when we had that report, City of Green Bay had what, 500, I think, short-term rentals, right? So they're all over the city, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
this type of, you know, compliance issue exists all over the city, though, albeit it might be a little more heavily concentrated over there. So, you know, I just want to make sure that we're addressing it in all areas too.
Yeah, well, absolutely. There's Airbnbs on the bay. You know, some of those homes along there, so I mean.
Down by the bay.
I do have a question.
By the bay.
Is there a vehicle by which we're learning more about these? For some reason, I think we're learning about them because they have to register or something. Why is there this implied notion that there's a lot more money coming in from these, from this
my impression has been is that they're supposed to get licensed, and they don't necessarily. And so we're missing out on tax money. We're finding we've got problems at homes that aren't listed as Airbnbs, at least as far as our records go. It's just like when someone converts their home into a duplex without notifying the city. And so we have all these issues going on with a lot of these Airbnbs and things like that where they're not becoming technically licensed. And I hope Brown County and Green Bay are doing their due diligence to check these websites, you know,
Okay.
see what's out there and make sure that we're holding people, you know, because a lot of these, from what I'm hearing, again in Ashwaubenon, a lot of these homes are owned by people that don't even live in the state.
Right.
They're investments.
But I thought there was a way that we're finding out now.
The software program, I think they're down there.
This is certainly not my item, but I certainly can talk to it. There's been a couple things. The fee for transient housing last year was $100 to get a permit. It went to $500 this year. Renewals used to be, or no, it was $250, went to $500, and then your renewals were $100, and they went to $250. So our revenue source, volume even has gone up a lot.
Just on that.
Just the volume. The East Community and Economic Development Area has worked with a company, I think called Granicus, to find out where all the rentals are. And the sixth floor sent out over 500 letters in the month of June after you just approved a new ordinance.
It's an ordinance modification.
So that is to remind people like, hey, we can tell you are renting, or it looks like you're advertising, and we don't show you it being permitted. So we're being very much more active, proactive, and then the next step, so they have to have a permit with the city of Green Bay, they have to pay $500 if they're new. They also have to get a room tax permit if they're going to rent, and then of course they have to take care of, they gotta go to the county. But the permit, the fee itself has been increased, doubled from $250 to $500 for a new. No, and we also, that's with anticipation that we're gonna continue to get more and more rentals.
Okay, thank you. You jarred my memory, because that, we approved the increases. And then during that discussion, I think it was, yeah, we're finding out more through the internet. Okay.
Well, and just as a reminder, we approved and subsequently council unanimously approved the addition of a housing and compliance inspector, and that was anticipated to be covered through revenue generated partially through the increase of this. So, and again, it all goes to one pot, right? But but we did bring on that additional housing and compliance inspector to help with this, as well as I think some of the RAD inspections and some other needs that they had in that area. But
Okay.
Motion for staff.
All right. Yep.
Second.
Motion. Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that passes unanimously. On the informational, does anyone have any questions on the report of routine personal action items? No? Our next meeting is August 15th, 2023. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and we are adjourned.